Hello, YouTubers out there. This is Jerry at the Movies, also known as Jerry Saravia. I wanted to post this response to the Siskel and Ebert show on film criticism. Um, a little background on me very quickly. I've been writing film reviews online since 1998 and uh, maintain my own. I've maintained two different sites. Now I just have really a blog site. Now I guess you could say used to be a professional film critic, meaning I wrote for a local paper and got paid for it. So I guess that's as professional as I ever really got. Um, but I've also written film reviews pretty much since the 1980s. And one of the things that I discovered is that when you write a film review, you have to write it as if you were there in the movie theater along with everyone else. In other words, that movie is a part of your experience for the 1 hour and a half to 2 hours to 3 hours that you're sitting there watching the film. So you have to communicate the experience. And by that I mean not just the suspension of disbelief, but accepting that what you're seeing is really happening, even though, of course, it's all an illusion. And if something breaks the illusion, whether it's something that happens with the writing, the acting, whatever it is, that destroys the illusion, that shatters the illusion of a movie. Because, of course, a movie is one of the great magical tricks of all time, isn't it? I mean, if you really think about it, what you're seeing is something that's occurring 24 frames per second. You don't know that when you're sitting in the movie theater, but that's the reality. You are seeing a series of still images that give the illusion of movement. Now, if the director does what they do best, which is to engage the viewer and somehow bring you into their world, then you don't know that there is this illusion. Most people don't even realize that, but that's really what it's all about. So you forget that you're sitting there in a movie theater watching a film. So you do have to communicate in a film review how the experience is like a trance, like you're there, like you cannot, for the life of you, get up from your seat and grab some popcorn. Those are the best films, the great films. They do that, and good films too, but especially the great films. Um, Now the other thing too is that we have to remember one other thing, which Siskel and Ebert do not illustrate in their program there, but I'm sure they would agree to a certain extent, and that is that in order for a film to engage you, it doesn't mean that it has to be full of rapid millisecond cuts. In other words, there's always something happening on screen by virtue of always cutting to something else in a handheld camera movement. Um, if it's one single car crash after another or whatever the case may be. Uh, Doing anything you can to keep an audience awake when in fact you might be putting them to sleep. When everything is too much in a frenzy, unless it's something that is done with the singular purpose of being in a frenzy, because the frenzy is part of the story. For example, some would disagree in Natural Born Killers, then that's different. But in general, that has become the style. And most of the time, nobody attributes the word pretentious to that type of filmmaking, where it's just a lot of noise, but with no real soul. Um, all sound and fury signifying nothing. So that and the fact that if it's a slower film that is more intimate, that takes its time to tell a story, that that makes it pretentious, and that's not the case. Um, Now there are many other things, but I'll just illustrate very quickly one that I feel has to be a part of the discussion when you're reviewing films. Most films have a story, a plot, a climax. They're told the same way that a novel would tell a story, um, either linear or non-linear storytelling, but they all have a narrative base. well, not all films. And that's what one has to recognize. It's not just Terrence Malick making The Tree of Life or Days of Heaven for that matter, where it's more of a poem and more of a way of a tone poem, um, a singular vision by which narrative is not necessarily the fabric of the film. So that although he may still be telling a story, it's all through images, and what you take away from it is what you bring to the table. Many people call that pretentious. So foreign films are often placed in that category, or films by Gus Van Sant, maybe not so much, but especially Terrence Malick. And then we also have to recognize avant-garde films, which wouldn't be necessarily just Terrence Malick, but Stan Brakhage, for example, who did films like Mothlight, where it runs about a minute and a half, and all it is, it's he removed the lens from the camera and photographed this moth. Um, those type of films should not be excluded, nor should they be called pretentious, but they are, and not necessarily by elitists, but just by people who feel there's no value in those type of films. So we always must remember when we're reviewing films um, that there are different types of films. There are narrative-based films and non-narrative. The non-narrative is tougher to review because the precedent is, well, if you've seen that type of film before, then you can review it. But if you haven't, you might label it as, well, with all sorts of synonyms for pretentious. Rex Reed is known for doing that sort of thing a lot. But most importantly, I think, too, is that when you're reviewing a film, any film, um, do not be snobbish. And by that I mean, don't review the film as if you are smarter than the film. You know, that there's some subjects that you feel shouldn't be told, whether it's about mafia or child abuse or political situations that go on around the world. You are not better than the film. Review the film based on the subject and how it's told. That's really the whole purpose. And also, don't make it overly literate. In other words, what you don't want to do is come across as in this case, what would be a snobbish uh, professor of cinema who feels, I am better than all of you. I know what's best. Don't take that tone. That's pure arrogance, and it doesn't do good for anybody. That wouldn't even do good for a. It wouldn't serve anyone's purpose in a dissertation on cinema studies either. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is when you review a film, you consider what it's similar to in tone and style, and the subject is something that you review on the basis of how it's told. Now, if it exploits the subject, if it exploits something and does it in a one-dimensional manner, you have to discuss that. But I guess what I'm saying is you're a critic, but you're also the audience. So pretend you're the audience, and you can assume that you would know a little bit better than maybe other people that just go to the movies all the time and don't, go there for the entertainment. Um, but you know a little better because you have seen a lot of films. So you have something to gauge your response by. But it doesn't mean that you do know better overall, because you don't. Because an average person, well, I shouldn't say it like that, let's say the average person that goes to the movies doesn't really think about cinema history in general, and nor will they always remember films that are similar to the film that they're seeing, where the story might have been told in a much better way in the past, or might still be told better in the future. Um, so I think what you have to do is you basically, the way I do it, is pretend that you are the audience first and the critic second, and kind of mesh the two, find your own voice, and thus that's how you will get your, hopefully, viewers to listen to you and get some insight also out of your reviews. Um, That's how I feel about it. There's clearly a lot more that can be said about film criticism. Um, I do believe it is an art form. But lastly, I want to say give every film a chance. I was not the biggest fan of Adam Sandler. There was something about the guy I couldn't stand. Um, Somehow I just thought this guy's just not funny. And I saw Punch Drunk Love and kind of changed my view on it a little bit. I mean, it's not to say I love every film he's done since then, not at all. Many of them I kind of refuse almost to see. But you judge every film. Every film has its day in court, as Siskel and Ebert said. But you give everyone a fair chance. Don't go in with a preconceived notion. Don't judge a film until you've seen it. You have to remember what the sci-fi author and also film critic too, Harlan Ellison said, which is it's not enough to have an opinion about something. You have to have an informed opinion, and that's absolutely true. So give every film a chance. Don't just assume it's going to be garbage. I mean, of course there are times you're going to think something's probably going to be garbage, and you might surprise yourself, or it might be even worse than garbage. But give every film a chance. It doesn't matter what it is. Give it a chance. If you can't stand it, nobody's holding a gun to your head. You don't have to sit through the whole thing. If you're in a movie theater, that's when it gets a little rough. Every film I've seen in a movie theater, I sat through. Every film I've seen on video, with the exception of 3 or 4 films, I've not. So give every film a chance. Uh, that's what I say. If you're reviewing it, give it a chance. Um, don't go in with preconceived notions. And that's all I got to say about that. This is Jerry's Movies with your host Jerry Sadavia. Hoping some of you might even check out my channel or read reviews online for me. And Jerry's Movies, signing off.